the overwhelming impression of all Muslim cemeteries, despite occasional differences like this, military otherwise, is one of equality and homogeneity. Everyone appears as a sea of identical white headstones and footstones. If you walk among them, you can see distinctions. There are differences between them, but they're pretty minor, and far more now in modern cemeteries than in old ones, but from a distance these distinctions are unnoticeable, and that is absolutely deliberate. Okay? According to Islamic law, grave markers should be nothing other than simple uninscribed stones, lacking even names, dates, or religious symbols. And in some cases, that's actually the way they still do it. So I don't know if you guys remember the recently deceased King Abdullah, the Saudi king. He was buried in an unmarked grave, and there was no official mourning period. Right? The Saudis still do it the right way, the official way. Yeah. But you know, sepulchral cultures draw not only from religious sources, but from the traditions of each local region. And Ottoman and Balkan tombstones are actually also famous for their rich tradition of epigraphic art, and under more recent pressures of modernization, grave markers in this region have begun to adopt other shapes and more secular symbols, and even the photographs or etchings of the deceased, which are really typical of the grave markers of their Balkan Christian neighbors. And it may be in this context that some 5 to 10% of the soldiers in the Sarajevo canton declined the offer of the standard military gravestone and said, no, one of the options is, okay, you can have this gravestone, or you can have a cash payment equivalent to the cost of it and build your own gravestone. Right? And about 5 to 10% did. Here's another one of these. And that's how you end up with something like this, which is practically invisible. But if you could see it, unfortunately, you're too far away from it. So the black one in there, here, this is again in the Travne Shahidsko Mazaria. It is very clearly a Muslim, but it is a black rectangle, marble, and it has a picture of the guy on it, an etching photo, which is totally not Muslim. But it has, it has other Muslim attributes to it. Okay? So it's very non-traditional. Okay, moving on to Croatia. I've not visited the military cemeteries in Vukovar. Only seen pictures of them. I didn't take the pictures, can't show them to you. That's what I'm doing this summer. Okay? But in fact, the military cemetery in Vukovar, Croatia, is not really specifically military. It is intended to commemorate civilian as well as military victims who were buried there. And it's entitled the Croatian Memorial Cemetery of Homeland War Victims. It is basically just a bunch of white crosses, right, which are intended to symbolize both Catholicism and victimization. So then there's another military cemetery in Vukovar, which is for Serbs, created for the Serbian members of the former Yugoslav National Army who died also in the Battle of Vukovar. That one was really interesting. Again, all of the monuments look the same, rectangles. What was interesting about that one was that it originally included little tops on them, which were the shape of the Serbian national military caps, called shajkača. They're very famous in Serbia. But at some point, they took all of those off, whether it was because of constant vandalism or because they decided to make the cemetery a little bit more neutral, less military, less nationalist, is unclear. Right? But so now they're just ordinary rectangles. Then in Zagreb, capital city of Zagreb, its most famous cemetery, Mirgoj, there's a separate section for soldiers from the recent war, but there is absolutely no unity in terms of style of monument. And in fact, I've seen no evidence at all that the Croatian government provided any kind of standardized grave marker or any military cemetery. And that's a bit odd, really given the enormous significance that the state of Croatia has attached to this war. They even changed its name from the Homeland War to the Croatian War of Independence. But there's no military cemetery other than the one at Vukovar, and no specific grave marker. On the other hand, on a private level, families of the deceased have more than made up for this lapse in public attention. And it's perhaps here that you can best see the role that national ideology has played in private mourning. Grave markers for deceased Croatian soldiers, more than those of perhaps any other national group, are likely to include not only religious, but national and state symbols on them, and sometimes lots of them. And we see them on them consistently, not only the Croatian flag, but a state herald, sometimes a symbol from the military unit. There's this ancient braided cross from 10th century Croatia that has been rehabilitated that shows up, and then a variety of religious symbols, Virgin Mary, crucifix, cupids. I have a number of these. This is one of my absolute favorites. So it has the braided cross, it has the flag with the shakovnica, which is the little red and white checkerboard, has his military symbol, right, all of that on one. Then this is another one. I saw this quite a lot in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croat sections. This sort of half shakovnica checkerboard with a cross. And then this one, right, with the Virgin Mary and the shakovnica and a cross and angels and flowers. Right? They put lots of stuff on them. Right? So this mixture of religious and national and state symbols is quite common on Croat